I never thought I would go from writing code in my apartment to taking down a $200 million tech empire. The app was my creation, my baby. I poured everything into it. Sleepless nights, endless debugging, revolutionary algorithms that nobody else had thought of. When Technova hired me, they promised partnership. Instead, they took my work, claimed the glory, and then showed me the door when they thought I was expendable. What they never discovered was the kill switch I had built into the very foundation of the code. Before I dive into how it all went down, where are you watching from? Hit that subscribe button and drop a like if you have ever been underestimated. Trust me, what happens next makes every tech entrepreneur's nightmare look like a pleasant dream. Growing up outside Seattle, I was always the kid taking apart computers instead of playing sports. My parents worked factory jobs, honest work that put food on the table but never quite enough for college tuition. That never stopped me. While friends were partying through their 20s, I worked at a local electronics store during the day and taught myself Python, Java, and C++ at night. The internet became my university forums, my classrooms, and open source projects, my practical exams. I had this dream burning inside me, creating something revolutionary in financial technology. Something that would help ordinary people manage their money with the sophistication of Wall Street traders. Not another budgeting app or investment tracker, but something that could predict financial patterns before they happened, offering everyday users the power previously reserved for the wealthy. At 28, I packed everything I owned into my beat-up Honda Civic and drove to San Francisco with $2,000 in savings and my trusty laptop. The tech mecca was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Coffee shops overflowed with hopeful founders pitching to bored-looking investors. Apartment prices made my savings look like pocket change, forcing me to share a two-bedroom with 4 other wannabe tech stars. For 6 months, I bounced between coding boot camps and freelance gigs, sleeping on a mattress on the floor and eating ramen more often than not. Every interview at established companies ended the same way. Impressive skills, but we need someone with a formal education or significant industry experience. The rejections stung, but with each no, the code for my dream app grew more complex, more refined. The call from Technova Incorporated came on a Tuesday morning. I almost missed it while debugging a client project at a local coffee shop. The recruiter sounded genuinely impressed with the GitHub portfolio I had submitted. 3 interviews later, I was offered a mid-level developer position at what industry blogs called the most promising fintech startup of the year. Walking into their sleek headquarters for the first day felt surreal. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the bay, and the open workspace hummed with energy. Marcus Wright, the CEO, welcomed new hires personally, a tall, imposing figure with perfectly tailored suits and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Stephanie Holloway, the COO, flanked him constantly, taking detailed notes and finishing his sentences. They painted a vision of disrupting the financial world that aligned perfectly with my dreams. Those first months were everything I had hoped for. The team collaborated freely. Code reviews were constructive rather than competitive, and Friday happy hours built genuine camaraderie. I met Jason, another self-taught developer who became my closest ally. We spent countless lunch breaks brainstorming features and debating tech architecture. Then came the first red flag. A junior developer named Aiden had developed an innovative notification system that dramatically improved user engagement. During the all-hands meeting, Marcus proudly showcased the feature as an executive team innovation. I watched Aiden shrink in his chair as his work was claimed without acknowledgement. When I asked him about it later, he just shrugged. That is how it works here. The higher-ups take the credit, we keep our jobs. That night I stared at my own code, wondering if I was making a terrible mistake. But the salary was helping me pay off debts, and the company resources seemed like my best shot at developing something truly groundbreaking. I convinced myself that Aiden must have misunderstood the situation, or that it was an isolated incident. The idea came to me at 3 a.m, jolting me awake from a dead sleep. I grabbed my laptop and frantically typed pseudocode for hours, mapping out an artificial intelligence system that could analyze spending patterns against market trends in real time. Not just tracking purchases, but predicting optimal times for major financial decisions based on individual behavior and external economic factors. I spent every weekend and evening for 3 months building the prototype. My apartment became a cave of empty coffee cups and whiteboards filled with algorithms. The app could tell users not just where their money went, but when to make big purchases, when to invest, when to save, all personalized to their unique financial fingerprint. The AI engine could process thousands of data points and deliver advice that previously required a team of financial advisors. The technical architecture was beautiful in its complexity, yet intuitive in its interface. I developed a proprietary machine learning model that improved with each user interaction. The back end used a custom encryption protocol that kept financial data secure, while still allowing the lightning-fast calculations necessary for real-time recommendations. At first, I kept the project entirely separate from my Technova work. This was my creation, my ticket to independence. But as the prototype took shape, doubts crept in. Building the infrastructure to support millions of users would require resources I simply did not have. Jason noticed my exhaustion during a debugging session and pressed until I confided in him. After seeing the demo, he sat back, eyes wide. "Cleon, this is revolutionary. Technova would kill for this. You need to show Marcus and Stephanie, and let them take credit like they did with Aiden." I countered. "No, you negotiate terms first. Get everything in writing. This is too big to build alone, and you know it." He leaned forward, earnest. "Just be smart about the approach." After another week of deliberation, I decided Jason was right. I needed Technova's resources, but I would be smarter than Aiden. I would protect my intellectual property and negotiate proper recognition. The presentation to the executive team was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. I spent hours refining my demo, ensuring every transition was seamless. Marcus, Stephanie, and 4 board members filed into the conference room, expressions neutral as I connected my laptop to the projector. From the first slide, I could see I had their attention. Marcus leaned forward imperceptibly. Stephanie stopped taking notes to watch the live demonstration. When I showed how the app predicted market fluctuations with 87% accuracy in backtesting, one board member whispered to another. After the presentation, the room erupted in calculated enthusiasm. Questions fired from all directions about scalability, market potential, implementation timeline. Marcus clasped my shoulder, his grip slightly too tight. "This is exactly the kind of innovation Technova fosters," he announced, as if the idea had somehow been a product of their corporate environment. "We need to fast-track this. Stephanie, prepare the partnership agreement. Cleon, we will make sure you are properly credited as the development lead." The next day, I received a thick contract with promises of project leadership, substantial bonuses tied to revenue milestones, and my name featured in all marketing materials. The company attorneys explained each clause with reassuring smiles. What they emphasized less was the intellectual property assignment buried in subsection 5C, or the non-compete clauses that extended 5 years beyond employment. Jason glanced at the contract during lunch. "Get your own lawyer," he advised quietly. But the momentum was intoxicating. The executives kept emphasizing the narrow market window, how delays could mean competitors beating us to launch. I convinced myself that their urgency reflected the value they placed on my creation. 3 days later, I signed the documents. 6 weeks afterward, at the company all-hands meeting, Marcus unveiled FinGenius to the staff. My revolutionary financial prediction engine had been renamed, repackaged, and presented as a breakthrough collaborative innovation from the Technova leadership team, with development support from our talented engineering department. My name appeared on the 17th slide in a list of 12 developers who contributed to the code base. The app launch broke every company record. Tech blogs called it the future of personal finance and an AI revolution in consumer banking. Download numbers crashed our servers twice on the first day. Revenue hit $10 million by the end of week 1, as premium subscriptions soared. I watched the success from my new office, smaller than my previous one, and relocated from the developer floor to a converted storage room near accounting. The explanation was that I needed focused space to maintain the core algorithm, but the message was clear. Now that the product existed, my value was diminishing. Each morning I checked the metrics dashboard and felt conflicting emotions. Pride in seeing my creation help millions of users make smarter financial decisions. Bitterness, watching the stock price soar without owning meaningful equity. By the end of the first month, revenue passed $50 million, and Marcus appeared on the cover of Tech Innovator magazine, posed in front of a whiteboard filled with fragments of my original algorithm sketches. My attempts to schedule meetings with the executive team were repeatedly rescheduled, then delegated to middle managers. My emails suggesting critical improvements received brief acknowledgments, but no action. Meanwhile, marketing materials gradually shifted language from groundbreaking algorithm to vaguer terms like proprietary system that erased any hint of individual creation. Jason caught me in the break room one Tuesday, carefully checking that we were alone before speaking. "They are rewriting history." In real time, he muttered, showing me a draft of the annual report that described FinGenius as conceptualized by Marcus Wright during a leadership retreat. Stephanie became the guardian of the app's origin story. In meetings, she would smoothly interrupt if I mentioned early development phases. Let us focus on current optimizations rather than preliminary concepts. If I pushed back, her smile would tighten. We all remember the collaborative process differently, Cleon. The situation grew more complicated when Arthur Bennett, CEO of rival fintech company DataSphere, approached me at an industry conference. "The architecture behind FinGenius has your fingerprints all over it," he said casually over drinks. "If you ever decide Technova is not the right home for your talents, my door is open." Word of this conversation somehow reached Marcus within hours. The next day, security protocols were updated. My access to certain code repositories was restricted for compliance purposes. My team was restructured, dispersing key members to different departments. New employment contracts appeared with strengthened confidentiality clauses and expanded non-compete provisions. Everyone understood the unspoken message: loyalty or consequences. That weekend alone in my apartment, I made a decision. I had seen too many developers lose control of their creations. I had watched companies discard innovators once their ideas were implemented. I needed insurance. Over the next month, I carefully constructed what programmers call a backdoor, a hidden access point that only I could activate. But this was more sophisticated than a simple password bypass. I built a complete system override that I called the kill switch, embedded so deeply in the core architecture that it would be nearly impossible to detect in code reviews. The ethics of creating such a tool troubled me. Was I becoming as manipulative as the executives I resented? Was this protection or sabotage? I convinced myself it was merely self-preservation. I would never use it, unless absolutely necessary, only if they tried to completely erase my contribution or weaponize my creation in ways I never intended. The code was disguised as routine maintenance functions scattered across multiple systems in fragments that only made sense when assembled with the proper key. I tested it in the sandbox environment, after hours confirming I could temporarily freeze functionality without damaging user data. The power was sobering. With a few keystrokes, I could halt the entire operation that now generated millions in daily revenue. I closed the backdoor access points, erased all traces of the testing, and continued my daily work as if nothing had changed. The kill switch became my silent partner, an invisible insurance policy against betrayal. At the $200 million revenue milestone, Technova hosted a lavish celebration at an exclusive rooftop venue. Champagne flowed as Marcus delivered a speech praising the visionary leadership that brought FinGenius to market. Awards were distributed to marketing teams, sales directors, and infrastructure managers. The development team received a group acknowledgement for technical implementation. During the party, Lauren from marketing approached me by the bar. Unlike most others who now avoided direct conversation with me, she spoke frankly. "You know, the original press release I wrote clearly named you as the creator and lead architect. It came back from executive review with all specifics removed." She glanced around and lowered her voice. "Just wanted you to know some of us remember the truth." Something about her honesty gave me courage. I found Marcus alone in the venue's private office reviewing quarterly projections even during the celebration. 200 million in revenue from my algorithm, I said without preamble. Yet the company still has not implemented the user protection features I have been advocating for months. Marcus barely looked up. Your algorithm, I believe you mean Technova's proprietary technology as clearly established in your employment contract. He finally turned to face me. And those features you keep pushing would slow response time by milliseconds. Our users want speed. They also want security, I countered. And proper financial advice, not just what generates the highest affiliate commissions. His expression hardened. You were hired to write code, not dictate company policy. Remember that talent is replaceable, Cleon. Especially talent that forgets its place in the organizational hierarchy. The threat was unmistakable. As I left the office, I noticed Stephanie watching from across the room, her gaze calculating. Something in her expression told me wheels were already in motion. Monday morning, I arrived to find security waiting at my desk. The burly guard avoided eye contact as he escorted me to the human resources floor. Inside a sterile conference room, Stephanie sat with two attorneys and the HR director, their expressions professionally neutral. We have uncovered some concerning code irregularities, Stephanie began without preamble, sliding a folder across the table. These logs show unauthorized access to core systems outside normal development protocols. The evidence was technically accurate but deliberately misinterpreted standard debugging sessions portrayed as suspicious activity. Before I could formulate a response, the senior attorney spoke. Additionally, we have evidence of communication with direct competitors which constitutes a clear violation of your non-compete agreement. He produced printouts of my entirely innocuous conversation with Arthur Bennett, carefully edited to appear sinister. This is absurd, I protested. Those were authorized debugging sessions, and Bennett approached me, not the other way around. Stephanie's smile never reached her eyes. The documentation suggests otherwise. Rather than pursuing legal action, Technova is offering a termination agreement. She pushed another document forward. 4 weeks severance in exchange for a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and a reaffirmation of all previous intellectual property assignments. The insulting offer made my blood boil. 4 weeks' pay for an app generating millions daily. I want to speak to Marcus. Mr. Wright is not involved in routine terminations, the HR director replied smoothly. You have 30 minutes to clear your desk. Your credentials have already been revoked. Security escorted me to my workspace where I discovered my computer had been imaged and reset. Personal items were packed in a cardboard box. Coworkers averted their eyes as I was marched through the open floor plan. By noon, my keycard was deactivated, and I stood on the sidewalk outside Technova headquarters, clutching a box of desk plants and family photos. The financial impact hit immediately. San Francisco apartments do not forgive missed rent payments regardless of circumstances. My savings would cover 3 months at most. But the emotional devastation cut deeper than any financial concern. I tried contacting former teammates seeking understanding, or at least closure. Most messages went unanswered. Those who did respond were apologetic, but distant. Really sorry, man, but I cannot get involved, or maybe best to make a clean break. The industry grapevine hummed with rumors about my ethical violations and security breaches, effectively blacklisting me without formal accusation. Job applications met with initial interest, followed by sudden rejections. One hiring manager finally leveled with me off the record. Someone at Technova is making calls. Nothing official, just concerns about your departure. Enough to make you radioactive. 2 weeks into unemployment, Lauren reached out through an encrypted messaging app. We met at a coffee shop 3 neighborhoods away from Technova. Her hands trembled slightly as she showed me her phone. They are taking the company public, she whispered. $500 million valuation, almost entirely based on FinGenius. Marcus and Stephanie stand to make fortunes on their equity. She scrolled through internal documents, and they have completely rewritten the origin story. Not just minimizing your role, erasing it entirely. The official version now states Marcus conceptualized the core algorithm during his doctoral research. But he never completed his doctorate, I said, stunned by the audacity. They are counting on no one checking that detail. She put her phone away. I am leaving the company. Could not stomach it anymore. Thought you should know what they are doing. That night I consulted an attorney who specialized in intellectual property rights. His assessment was blunt. Your contract gives them ownership of everything you created while employed. The non-compete prevents you from working in the same space for 5 years. Fighting them would cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees, with minimal chance of success. The system was designed to protect corporate interests, not individual creators. David versus Goliath stories rarely end with David winning in corporate America. As my apartment filled with moving boxes downgrading to a shared space in Oakland, Jason appeared at my door. He had been terminated the week after me for performance issues that mysteriously arose after he questioned my firing. They are systematically removing anyone who knows the truth, he said, helping me pack my books. But they made one critical mistake. What mistake? They think this is about money or recognition. But for you, it was always about building something meaningful. He looked at me pointedly. Something you would protect. That night after Jason left, I stared at my laptop for hours. The kill switch existed. I had the access keys. With a series of commands, I could freeze the entire FinGenius platform. Not destroy it. I would never harm user data, but render it temporarily inoperable. The moral implications weighed heavily. Users relied on the app for financial decisions. Technova employees who had nothing to do with executive decisions would face chaos. Yet Marcus and Stephanie had not only stolen my creation, but were now actively erasing my contribution, while preventing me from working in my field. I spent a week documenting everything: original concept sketches, early code repositories, email exchanges, the gradual restriction of my role. Not for a lawsuit I could not afford, but for protection against inevitable accusations. I recorded conversations with former colleagues willing to confirm my role. I compiled a timeline showing the correlation between my reduced access and increased revenue milestones. If I was going to use the nuclear option, I needed to ensure I would not be portrayed as a vindictive saboteur. This would be a calculated statement, not an emotional outburst. The day Technova announced their IPO filing, I made my move. From a public library computer using an encrypted connection, I accessed the backdoor I had created months earlier. The authentication required biometric confirmation and a passphrase known only to me. 3 minutes of careful commands, and the kill switch was armed. I timed the activation to coincide with a major investor presentation, where Marcus was demonstrating FinGenius to potential IPO backers. My final command initiated a system-wide freeze, not destroying any data but rendering the app completely non-functional. Users attempting to access their accounts received a message system undergoing maintenance to address potential security vulnerabilities. Service will resume when user data protection is guaranteed. Within minutes, my burner phone rang a number I recognized as Technova's main line. I did not answer but watched online as financial news sites began reporting the mysterious outage. Technova's stock, already trading on secondary markets, plummeted. Social media exploded, with speculation and user complaints. 3 hours later, Marcus called my personal number directly. His voice oscillated between rage and desperation. "What have you done?" he hissed. "I have not done anything that can be proven," I replied calmly. "But hypothetically, someone who built a system might ensure they could protect it from misuse. This is corporate sabotage. We will have you arrested. With what evidence? And what story will you tell? That the person you claim had nothing to do with creating the app somehow controls it. That would be quite the contradiction of your public statements." Silence hung on the line before his tone shifted to negotiation. "What do you want?" "Recognition of the truth. Fair compensation for my contribution. And the removal of restrictive clauses, preventing me from working in my field." "Impossible," he snapped. "The IPO paperwork is filed. Then I suggest you update it," I replied before ending the call. The tech media landscape exploded, with headlines: FinGenius, platform crashes day before Technova IPO, and security failure raises questions, about fintech darlings' infrastructure. Financial analysts began downgrading projections. Users threatened to switch services if their financial data was at risk. Technova's legal team sent threatening letters which my newly retained attorney paid for by a silent investor who turned out to be Arthur Bennett, countered with pointed questions about their evidence and the inconsistencies in their plies. Public statements about the app's creation. When a junior developer inadvertently mentioned Cleon's original architecture during a technical press briefing, the narrative began cracking. Tech journalists started investigating the app's history, uncovering early presentations and documentation that contradicted the official story. I received an unexpected ally when Arthur Bennett publicly questioned how a company could lose access to its flagship product unless something was seriously amiss with their development practices. His pointed comment, "True innovation requires acknowledging true innovators," was widely interpreted as supporting my unspoken position. 7 days into the crisis with Technova's IPO indefinitely postponed, and user exodus accelerating, the board of directors called an emergency meeting. By evening, my attorney received a call requesting a confidential discussion. The negotiation took place in a neutral location, a private room at a downtown law firm. Marcus and Stephanie were conspicuously absent, represented instead by the board chair and chief legal officer. The board has concerns about the current leadership's handling of intellectual property attribution, the chair stated carefully. We are interested in resolving this situation amicably, with appropriate recognition of all contributors to the company's success. The terms materialized over hours of negotiation. Public acknowledgement of my role as primary creator and architect of FinGenius, appropriate financial compensation through equity that should have been granted originally, removal of all non-compete and restrictive clauses, and a leadership position on a newly formed Innovation Ethics Committee with authority over intellectual property practices. In return, the mysterious technical issues would be resolved, and I would provide full documentation of the architecture to ensure no future service interruptions. No explicit admission of the kill switch was ever made by either side, a convenient fiction that allowed the agreement to proceed. 3 days later, FinGenius mysteriously resumed full functionality. The following week, Technova issued a press release, highlighting the significant contributions of original architect Cleon Taylor, and announcing organizational changes to better recognize and protect innovation. Marcus and Stephanie remained for the IPO, but were quietly transitioned to advisory roles within 6 months. The industry understood the message. They had been effectively demoted, without the public relations damage of outright termination. Rebuilding FinGenius with proper recognition brought unexpected healing. I assembled a development team that included Jason and several others who had been marginalized under the previous leadership. Lauren joined as communications director, implementing transparent attribution practices for all innovations. We established clear ethical guidelines for the app's algorithms, prioritizing genuine user benefit over revenue maximization. The Innovation Ethics Committee became a model adopted by other tech companies facing similar tensions between corporate ownership and creator recognition. Arthur Bennett became a strategic advisor, helping expand the platform while maintaining its integrity. His experience navigating the cutthroat fintech world proved invaluable as we scaled internationally. The hardest part was processing the emotional aftermath of betrayal. For months, I struggled with trusting colleagues, constantly expecting another knife in the back. Therapy helped, as did honest conversations with the new leadership team about vulnerability and recognition. Over time, I found my sense of purpose expanding beyond code and algorithms. I established a mentorship program connecting self-taught programmers with ethical tech companies, helping talented individuals avoid the pitfalls I had experienced. Each success story, each developer receiving proper recognition and compensation for their innovations, helped heal the lingering wounds of my own experience. Looking back, I realized that preparing for betrayal saved me from being destroyed by it. The kill switch was never about revenge. It was about maintaining the leverage needed to ensure justice when normal channels failed. In an industry where power so often overwhelms principle, sometimes the only protection is building it into the foundation of your work. The greatest lesson was learning that true innovation cannot be stolen if you refuse to remain silent. Your voice backed by truth and principle can be more powerful than any contract or corporate machine. My question for you is this: what systems in your life need a kill switch? What boundaries should you establish before they are tested? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit like if this story resonated with your own experiences. And subscribe for more real stories about standing up for yourself in a world that often rewards silence. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the most important code you write is the one that protects your future.